Yep, you guessed it, this was another little book exchange. This time my good buddy Ryuichi Hasegawa got to read Space Wolf and Horus Rising. In a similar vein to Heroes of the Space Marines, this is a collection of 10 short stories about the warriors of the Adeptus Astartes. The only real difference is that this time there are no stories that focus on the warriors of the Traitor Legions, which is a bit of a shame. Mostly third person throughout, although one is told in first person past tense, one is a mixture of first person present and third person past tense, and one, well, I'll get to that one later. As with the previous Space Marine anthology, there can be no overall style to things, and here I've read full novels by Graham McNeill, Ben Counter and James Swallow. Well, after the mostly positive experience with Heroes of the Space Marines, I was understandably looking forward to reading this one. As I mentioned earlier, it is a shame that there are no stories focusing on Chaos Space Marines, especially as a Chaos-centric story in Heroes produced my favourite of the book. However, one thing that hasn't changed is that with 10 short stories, come 10 short reviews. A Salamanders story which sees the Marines we first met in Fires of War engage a foe they are ill-equipped to face. This is a well-paced, well-written short that is easily one of the best in the anthology. Special mention must go to the last few paragraphs, however, which are truly beautiful. A White Scars story which features a squad of the Scars on a vital mission behind enemy lines. The idea behind this is very good indeed, with plenty of potential, but it is wasted by virtue of being poorly written. Certain character interactions simply don't work, any tension that might have been built is destroyed by one line in the wrong place, and the climax is poorly handled. Two major things really smoked me off though. The first was that a fully trained, highly experienced Space Marine needed to be told by another fully trained, highly experienced Space Marine that their helmet distorts their voice. For pity's sake. The second is that the White Scars seem to be one of the only Space Marines without either enhanced vision that allows them to see in the dark, or else an inbuilt night vision mode in their helmets. A Black Templar story that takes place on the ice fields of Armageddon. A solid slice of Space Marine adventuring, there are several well-written moments dotted throughout, and it makes a change for the main character to be a dreadnought instead of a normal Space Marine. Things culminate nicely with an ending that, in true action-adventure style, did make me smile. It was also nice to see a certain set of Imperial Fist successors catch a break for once. A Space Wolf story that takes place in 40k history where a traitor cardinal makes the unfortunate mistake of invading Fenris. In all honesty, when I heard the title Legends of the Space Marines, this is the sort of story I was actually expecting. It is a tale as opposed to a story, by which I mean it is written in the style of someone actually telling it to a group of Space Wolf Bloodclaws. This is literally a legend of the Space Wolves, which, given my expectations, makes this one of the best in the anthology. However, there are several ways of writing such a story, and in my opinion, this one takes the wrong way. It results in dialogue being stilted and a lot of the background being rushed. It's certainly not how I would have written this one, and as my good buddy Ryuichi pointed out, it feels amateurish. This makes it one of the worst, ironically enough. Overall, it is a fantastic concept that was exactly what I was expecting, but it is executed very poorly indeed. A Doom Eagle story which is, it turns out, a pseudo-sequel to the Blood Angels novel Black Tide. This is easily the best in the anthology as it does something interesting and a little bit different with a Space Marine. Because how do we view the warriors of the Astartes? Superhuman, devoted to their cause, indestructible masters of war. They know no fear. Or do they? There is one thing that they fear, one thing that can break or near as damn even the mightiest of the Emperor's chosen. And that is what gets explored here. There are many wonderful character moments, and one instance that sent chills down my spine. I genuinely hope this is a preamble to a Swallow-written Doom Eagles novel or series, because having seen what Swallow has done with the Blood Angels, it could be all kinds of interesting awesome, which is the best kind of awesome there is. An an Ultramarine story set between the novels Warriors of Ultramar and Dead Sky Black Sun, featuring the trial of Uriel Ventress for having the audacity to win an unwinnable war by ignoring the Codex Astartes. This is a well-written story that bridges the gap for readers of the Ultramarines novels, although it will likely mean nothing to anyone who hasn't at least read Warriors of Ultramar. Although, having said that, as my good buddy Ryoichi pointed out, that such blatant filler ended up in an anthology entitled Legends of the Space Marines is very, very cheap indeed. A Dark Hunters story that finally shows the consequences for the normal people of the Imperium when Astartes go to war. It's not often that we get to see the aftermath of a battle between Space Marines and Chaos, so this was very refreshing indeed. The scene is set brilliantly at the start, and although there is one moment near the end where I couldn't help but roll my eyes, this is a fine addition to the anthology. It also has the honour of featuring the first piece of proper swearing I've ever noticed in a Black Library story. It caused something of a double take, I'll be honest, but it seems at least one person realises the ironic hypocrisy of a grim, dark and nightmare future where countless billions are slaughtered every day, but naughty words are banned. An Angels in Carmine story that features... Yes, I know, I was just making sure you were paying attention. Anyway, a Mantis warrior's tale that again broadly fulfills what I was expecting from this anthology in the first place, in that it covers a matter of Space Marine history. In this case, it is set in the aftermath of the Badab War. I tell you this because for parts of this story to make any sense whatsoever, you're going to have to do a little bit of research on Lexicana. Because one thing Goto doesn't do is make it clear just what the hell is happening. The first half of the story had me rereading parts because I had absolutely no idea who was on which side. Which is something of a shame because this is otherwise quite well written and does a decent job of scene setting. Granted, the scene it sends is basically a Space Marine standing still for pages on end, with absolutely no resolution to a small subplot that's hinted at throughout. It's not terrible, but it should have been better. A Scythes of the Emperor story that once more is basically what I was expecting from this anthology, being as it is set in the aftermath of the war against the Tyranid High Fleet Kraken. As with most of the short stories, the idea is fantastic in that it seeks to explore the effects of near-chapter annihilation on a Space Marine. The problem is that it doesn't do it very well, and the prose is littered with glaring 40k inconsistencies. For example, much like in the White Skull story, it seems that the Scythes don't have genetically modified night vision. Additionally, most of the characters are completely unbelievable as Space Marines, as is the equipment they are using. This is a shame because there truly is a lot of potential for a story like this. It does have a pretty good final few paragraphs with an ending that was kind of predictable in a grim dark 40k kind of way, but it was good for all that. A Flesh Terror story that broadly centres around the Black Rage. A quick recap for anyone who doesn't know, the Black Rage is where a Space Marine from the Blood Angels or a successor chapter goes loopy and thinks he's Sanguinius on the battlements of the Emperor's Palace during the Siege of Terror. The Black Rage is touched upon briefly in the Blood Angels omnibus, but it's nice to see a story based around the concept. It uses a mixture of first-person present and third-person past tense to surprisingly good effect, and the contrast between what the Black Rage-afflicted Marine sees and what is actually happening is very well done indeed. There are certain moments that are made all the more chilling thanks to this contrast. The thing is, this really should have been a novel. The gayest point of the title was a battle that involved the Flesh Terrors and the Adeptus Sororitas, which didn't end that well, and this story covers some of the fallout from that. The problem being that it is all a little bit rushed and it could really have done with a full-length novel to give such a good idea room to breathe. Given the title, this is not quite what I was expecting, and in the case of the Ultramarine and Salamander stories, it feels more like an excuse to pimp the novels. But overall, this is a pretty good read, with The Last Detail and The Return being definite highlights.